Hello and welcome to Super Great Kids Stories, wise tales from storytellers around the world, which will make you laugh and sometimes cry. Recommended for ages 5 to 105. I'm Kim and I love stories. And this week the story is Rumplestiltskin with Jason Buck. Hello, Super Great Kids. How are you? I'm happy because the sun shone yesterday in England, so I went for a long walk in the country and we saw a red kite, which is a magnificent bird of prey, not like one of those toys that you fly in the sky. Another reason to be cheerful is that David and I have been invited to take Super Great Kids stories to the Stealing Thunder Storytelling Festival in the English Lake District. It takes place in mid-June and the theme is Scandinavian Midsummer. So there'll be trolls, myths, fairy tales, story walks and even a wild headdress making workshop. We'll be joined on stage by Toop, Shane Ibbs, Dominic Kelly and Emily and Nick Hennessy will be there because they're running the festival. Tickets are available now and children under 7 go free. So do take a look at their website, stealingthunder.co.uk. We're looking forward to that. Now, just before we get to our story, which is a fairy tale told by the marvellous Jason Buck, I wonder how many fairy tales could you put in a list? See how many you can remember while we have a quick word with the grown-ups. Just to get you started, here are 2 of my favourites, Baba Yaga and Cinderella. Ready? Off you go. Hello, Super Great Kids, I'm back. How many fairy tales did you remember? Did you get 5? That's pretty good going. And if you got 10, well, that makes you a fairy tale expert. See how many your grown-ups can remember. You might be able to out-fairy tale them. Remember, a fairy tale doesn't have to have a fairy in it, just a little sprinkle of magic. And now, it's time to welcome the magnificent Jason Buck, who is going to tell us his version of Rumplestiltskin. Hurrah! Are you sitting comfortably? Am I sitting comfortably? Then let the funny little man come hopping out. Sorry, Jason, I didn't mean you were the funny little man. I meant the goblin in the fairy tale.
Hello there, it's Jason Buck here. You might have heard me tell some other stories on Super Great Kids Stories. You might have heard me talking about trolls or the devil himself. But today I'm going to tell you the story of Rumplestiltskin. Once upon a time, back in the time of stories, there was a baker. He was a very rich baker. He was a very good baker. He made all sorts of wonderful bread and cakes. But he was a little bit too full of himself. And by that I mean he would make up stories and boast about things that weren't really true just to make himself sound even better. Now one day, he was sitting with some friends and talking away when he was boasting so loudly about this and about that everybody came to listen. And eventually he got so carried away making up stories about what a great person he was and what a wonderful thing he had done, he topped it all off by saying that his daughter could spin straw into gold. Now, at the end of the day, he didn't think much more about it, as everybody cheered and clapped and said how wonderful it was if that were true. But the trouble is that as soon as he had spoken those words, they were out in the world. And once you've said something, it can never be recaptured again. And so that story about his daughter being able to spin straw into gold went into someone's ear, and they told it to someone else, and it went into their ear, and they told it to someone else, and 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 someone else, until eventually it reached the ears of the king. Now the king thought, how wonderful! I could definitely do with a young lady who could spin straw into gold. I know, I'll promise to marry her if she can really do it. And to make sure she can, if she can't, I will say that I'll cut off her head. He was never really going to do that, but he thought it would frighten her into making sure that she made him as much gold as he could take. So a messenger was sent out by the king to the boastful baker, and he ordered him to bring his daughter before the king himself. And when she was brought before the king said, "My dear, I hear that you could spin straw into gold. At least that is what your father said. And if this is untrue, then one of you will lose your head for lying to me." And quick as a flash, the baker said, "Oh, yes, definitely. Oh, she can absolutely do it. Definitely. Please don't cut my head off. Yes, definitely. Yes, of course she can. Of course she can." "Well, I tell you what," said the king. "If she can, then I shall marry her. We'll put her in a room upstairs, and we will give her a spinning wheel, and we'll give her straw that has been gathered from the fields, and if by morning she has spun it into gold, all will be well, and I shall marry her. If not, one or both of you will have your heads cut off." And so the girl was taken to the highest room in the tallest tower, and in that room she was given a spinning wheel, and she was given a bundle of straw, and the door was locked, and there she was left till morning. Oh dear me, oh my, she thought. I can't possibly spin straw into gold. That's a magical thing, and I can't do magic. And she sat and began to sob. But while she was sitting there sobbing, a big cloud of smoke popped into the room, and in the centre of that smoke, coughing and spluttering because of the smoke, was a tiny little goblin-y man.
"Hello, pretty lady. What are you crying about?"
Oh, said the girl. Well, I've been imprisoned in this room, and if I can't spin this straw into gold by morning, well, I shall have my head cut off. Oh dear, boo-hoo, boo-hoo, bah."
"Oh, I see. Oh, easy peasy, easy stuff,"
said the funny little goblin-y man.
"I could do that for you."
"Could you? Oh, please, oh, thank you."
"But you've got to pay me."
"Oh," said the girl, and she looked down, and, well, there on one of her fingers was a ring that her mother had given her, and she thought, well, this is only gold, I suppose, if I pay the funny little goblin-y man, and I will get to keep my head. And so gladly she took the ring off her finger, and the little goblin-y man took it and said,
"Oh, that's lovely, that. Oh, that's nice stuff.
and he bit into it to make sure it was proper gold.
Lovely. Righto. Shift up, love. Shift up." Whee!
And the funny little goblin-y man sat down at the spinning wheel, and he began to move his foot on the treadle, and as the treadle went up and down, a lever went here and it moved there, and the wheel began to spin. And as he got the wheel to spin, he picked up straw and fed it in and turned it into golden thread. But when he had finished, the little goblin-y man looked at the ring and said,
"Thank you very much, you lady. Thank you very much indeed. Ta-ra then. Bye-bye."
and the room was full of very eggy smelling smoke. Now when the sun rose in the morning and the new day began, the king unlocked and opened the door, and he looked in, and there was the girl, and there was the spinning wheel, and the straw was no longer there, but there were neatly bundled up rolls of golden thread, thread made of pure gold.
My goodness me! I say, my dear, you have done awfully well.
And now he was just about to say, so let's get married, and you and your father can keep your heads. But the king was a little bit greedy, and he thought, well, if she can do one lot, maybe she could do more.
Is it just to make sure that this isn't a trick, or beginner's luck, or a one-off thing? You will spend another night in here, and I will give you even more straw, and you must spin that into gold. Do you understand, my dear? And then I tell you what, then definitely, absolutely, tomorrow morning, if you've done it, we'll get married if you like.
I see, Your Majesty, said the girl. Of course, I suppose so.
But remember, my dear, if you don't, you're going to lose your head.
Well, that evening the girl sat down. She was in that same room, and there was the spinning wheel, and this time there were more bundles of straw. She sat and once more began to sob. What are the chances, she thought, what are the chances of that strange little goblin-y man appearing ever again? And the more she thought, and the sadder she got, and the more she thought about next morning, the more the tears fell onto the floor, until there into the room came a great big puff of very eggy smelling smoke, and in the middle of it
I've got to stop doing that.
There was the strange little goblin-y man.
You're crying again, my dear. You're crying again. You're not very happy. No, not happy. Well, what's the matter? I managed to spin all that straw to gold.
Well, the king has said I must do it again tonight.
Well, if you could do it again, I could do it again for you. But you've got to pay me.
Well, the girl had no money on her. She'd given him his ring, and what else did she have? And she patted herself down and remembered, well, her necklace. This was a necklace her father had given her, and it was very precious, but, well, if it would save her head, then very well. How about I give you this, she said, and took off the necklace and held it out.
Oh, that's lovely, that. Oh, it's very pretty. Pack of stuff, that. Yeah, all right. I'll spin your gold, and in return for that necklace. Lovely,
said the strange little goblin-y man. And he sat down at the spinning wheel, and his foot began to pump up and down on the treadle, on the pedal, on the wheel, and that turned a lever, that turned this and that, and then the wheel went round, and the strange little man fed the straw into the spinning machine, and out came thread made of pure gold. Well, as soon as he'd finished,
Thanks very much. Right, look after yourself. Cheer out, then.
he vanished again in a puff of very eggy-smelling smoke. But when the morning came and the sun rose, and the king opened the door, well, he was very surprised to see that all the straw had been turned into gold.
Oh, I say, my dear, you've done awfully well, very well indeed.
And he was just about to say,
So we can get married and you can become my queen.
but he was a greedy king, as we have said before.
And he thought, perhaps one more evening and a few more stacks of straw, and then my treasure houses will be filled with gold. I tell you what, my dear, he said, one more time, just once more, third time's the charm, as they say. Whoa! Here is even more straw. You will spin this into gold by morning. If you do so, I shall marry you and make you my queen. And if you don't, I'll have your head off. Good luck, my dear.
And for one more night, the girl was locked in the room with the spinning wheel and even more stacks of straw, and well, straight away she began to sob and she began to weep, and as the tears fell plop, plop, plop onto the floor, you've guessed it, a huge puff of very eggy-smelling smoke. And in that puff of smoke there was the strange little goblin-y man.
And he said, you're upset again, are you, pretty lady? Oh, dear, you're making a habit of this. Is he what? Oh, I see the problem.
And he looked around, there was even more straw.
Oh, yes, I can do this for you. I know what you're going to ask me. I can certainly do this, but you've got to pay me.
Well, this time the girl patted herself down. She had no more rings and no more necklaces. She had no money, and she had no other jewellery, and she said, I have nothing to pay you with.
Oh, dear, that's a problem, then. You're going to lose your head tomorrow, aren't you?
Oh, please, please, please help me, she cried.
Well, all right,
said the strange little goblin-y man.
I will do it, so long as you give me your first-born baby.
Well, thought the girl, that sounds horribly cruel to give him my first-born baby. But she didn't have any other choice, and she thought, well, if I don't do it, I'll lose my head and I'll never have children at all. And very well, she said, I'll do that. I will give you my first-born baby.
Right,
said the strange little man.
I'll do this for you, and I will come to you a year and a day after your first-born baby is born to collect him. Right?
Thank you.
Off we go.
And he sat down at the chair, and his foot pedalled on the treadle on the floor, and that went up and down and turned a lever, and that turned the wheel. And the little man began to feed straw into the wheel, and out the other end came thread. You know, you've guessed it, you've heard this bit before. Thread made of pure gold. And once he'd finished, just before he disappeared,
I'll see you a year and a day after your first baby is born.
and very, very, very eggy-smelling smoke filled the air. Well, the young girl showed the king, and the king saw the gold, and he thought,
Well, that's lovely. We should do that. Wonderful. I'll make you my queen. I will marry you.
and the two got married. And she kept ahead, and so did her father. But after she had given birth to her first child, she began to worry about the strange little goblin-y man who would come and collect him and take him away. A year and a day after the baby was born, when the girl was sitting quietly in a room by herself, holding and rocking the baby, that strange, very eggy-smelling smoke burst into the room, and that funny little goblin-y man appeared again.
Hello, pretty lady. Do you remember me? That's right, I was the one who helped you not get your head cut off. Now then, how about that baby you promised me? Oh, is that it there? Lovely.
And he reached out to take the baby. But of course the young girl, who was now a queen, said, "But I love my baby. I can't give him up. I can't give him up."
Oh, you've got to give him to me,
said the little man. "You agreed. You said you would. Please, please, please," she said. "Is there any way that I can keep him?"
Well, I suppose I tell you what. If you can guess my name, you can keep him. I will give you a chance every evening for the next 3 days, starting tonight.
Well, what a great idea. All she had to do was guess his name. Oh, but there are so many names in the world. Oh, we've all got names and they're all different. And, well, she started to guess a few and she said, is it Brian?
No.
He said, is it Thomas?
No.
Is it Francois?
No.
Is it? And she went through names from all over the world. All the names that you can think of your friends in the area that you live, all the names that you could think of in other places of the world, she named them all.
No,
said the funny little man at the end of them all.
Right, he said, I'm going to come back tomorrow, and that's your second chance.
Well, she spent the next day trying to think about what names he could possibly be called. And she realised it must be something unusual. And so she looked up all the unusual names that she could think of. And on that second night, when he appeared again...
You guessed my name yet? But you haven't. I'm going to get the baby.
And she began to list out all the names again, but new names and other names, and she began to make up names that she thought might work. And after every guess, the strange little goblin-y man said,
No, not at all, never. Ah, nothing like it, no. Oh, think again. Oh, I'm going to get the baby.
At the end of the evening, before he disappeared, he said,
I shall see you tomorrow night. And then, if you don't guess it right, I get to keep the baby.
Well, all the next day, the Queen wandered here and there, holding her baby with her. She was very sad at the idea of having to lose her baby and having to give him away to this strange little goblin-y man. So she decided to go for a long walk to have a really good think. She walked away from the castle and through the fields and into the woods, and it was while she was deep in the woods she began to hear a strange song in the distance. She thought she recognised that voice. And so she quietly approached until she peeped between two trees, and there in the distance, dancing around a little campfire, there was the strange little goblin-y man.
She's never going to guess. I'm going to get the baby. She's never going to guess. Going to get the baby. She won't get it out. She won't get it in. She won't remember my name is Rumplestiltskin.
That's it. What was that name? It was so strange, and she listened to him dance and sing the song again. Rumplestiltskin. What a strange and unusual name, but that must be his name. She suddenly felt hope for the first time in days. And so that evening, as she sat in the highest room of the tallest tower, holding her baby, rocking him backwards and forwards, and she waited for the funny little goblin-y man to appear. And appear he did, as well you know, in a very eggy-smelling cloud of smoke.
Right, he said. I've come to collect my reward. Last chance. I bet you haven't got it right, have you? Right, come on then, give us your best go.
Well, the Queen started by saying, is it Poonsombat?
No, it's not Poonsombat.
What about Tiddlywap Mongidybing?
No one's called that, are they? What? No, give us another go.
And she began to go through names as if these were serious thoughts. Is it Whittleplop Tigglypan? No?
Okay, no, not at all, no.
Is it Ping Pongidybang?
No, it's not. Go on then.
Oh, I can't think of anything more, she said. But just as the strange little goblin-y man was reaching out, she said, unless, of course, is it Rumplestiltskin? And my goodness me, she sat there and she watched that strange little goblin-y man go from red to green and green to red and red to green again. He was so angry, steam was coming out of his ears. His eyes were rolling in his head. There was steam coming out of his nose. He was furious.
How did you guess it? Oh, you must have cheated. Oh, you must have all used magic. Oh, nobody knows my name.
But I know your name, said the Queen,
Oh,
and I get to keep my own baby, and you have to go away.
oh, how dare you? I'm so furious.
And he began to stamp his foot harder and harder and harder on the ground. Stamp with fury, stamp with anger, stamped with rage, until he stamped a hole in the floor. And not only was it a hole in the floor of the highest room in the tallest tower, but he had stamped so hard, he stamped a hole that went all the way through the castle and down, 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 deep, 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 deep into the ground. And down he fell. And she could hear him grumbling and moaning in the distance. And do you know, angry though he was, and furious though he was, she never saw the strange little goblin-y man called Rumplestiltskin ever again. And she grew up to live happily ever after, and so did the baby. In fact, they all lived happily ever after.
Thank you very much, Jason, for sharing that story. What did you like about it? I liked the goblin's voice, and his accent was pretty cool, and I liked the posh greedy king. And what did you think of that girl's dad? He was a bit rubbish, wasn't he? Fancy boasting about your daughter's skills and then nearly getting her head chopped off because of your bragging. And why didn't her dad try to rescue her? That's what I want to know. If you were telling that story, I wonder what silly names you would make up while the girl tries to guess the goblin's name. That version comes from Germany, but there is an early English version of the story too, known as Tom Tit Tot, and another version called Whoopity Story. Lots of fun to have with silly names there. Now, lots of you have joined our Owlets Club, so it's time to dip into our bag of happies and say thank you and welcome to some new owlets. Let's begin in Vernon in New Jersey in the US to say hello to Sally, who turns 7 this weekend. Sally and her brother Jackson listen to the stories every night. Sally's favourite is Coyote and Baby Turtle. I love your photos. What brilliant smiles. Thanks very much for sharing them. And I hope the sun shines for your happy day, Sally. Now, let's fly across to Sebastopol in California and say hello to Owlet Jasper, who is 7. His favourite story is How the Mosquito Became, also known as the Whistling Giants. That is the first traditional tale I heard being told, so that one is very special to me. And staying in California, let's say hello to Charlie, who is 8, and Crosby, who is 7. They live in San Marcos. Their family has listened to lots more Super Great Kids stories during a recent bout of flu. Well, I hope you're all feeling better. Charlie and Crosby like The Ghost of the Bloody Finger and The Magic Orange Tree. And let's head north now to Lopez Island in Washington State to greet Owlet Zayday, who was 7 last month. Zayday loves all the stories, especially Anansi, and all the Super Great Scary stories. And Bakur and the Dragon is her current favourite. Let's flip-flap-fly now over to McKinney in Texas to greet William and Oliver, who became Owlets for their 5th birthday. They like stories by Chris Bostock, and their favourite is The Lamb and the Wolf. They're very excited to hear more scary stories thanks to joining the Owlet Club. I hope you enjoyed Super Great David's Scary Witch story this month. And we're heading east now, all the way to Iceland to greet Emir Kauri, who is 5, and Agnes Looker, who is 2. They fall asleep to Super Great Kids stories every night. And their favourites are the 4 Dragons, the Lonely Giant, the Avank, and anything with a good monster in it. And let's fly south next across the sea to the UK to greet Owlet Arthur, who's 5.5 and who listens in Cambridge. He likes the Anansi stories and the Ghost of the Bloody Finger. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Welcome to the club, Arthur. And staying in the UK, we fly down now to Hampshire to greet Daphne, who is 4, and Florian, her baby brother, who is 1. Super Great Scary Stories are Daphne's favourites, and she asks her daddy to hide under the bed. She's very keen to see a live show, and she'd like me to meet her mummy. Well, that would be lovely, Daphne. Thank you. I'd love to meet you and your mummy sometime at one of our live shows. And hopping back to the US, let's greet Oscar, who is soon to turn 5 and lives in Philadelphia. He loves the Anansi stories, How Fire Came to the Earth, the Hairy Toe, which he doesn't think is as scary as I do. Well, I think you're probably a lot braver than me, Oscar. And heading west to Ritzville in Washington State, let's say hello to Owlet Autumn Marie, who is 7. Her favourite stories are Hey Ho and The Christmas Spiders. Ah, lovely choices, Autumn Marie. Welcome to the club. And now, let's return to sunny California to greet Owlet Jackson from Morgan Hill, who was 8 on December the 31st. Ooh, that's a good date for a birthday, Jackson. An easy one for your friends to remember. I hope you had a good one. Jackson's favourites are The Ghost of the Bloody Finger and anything with Baba Yaga in it. He's wanted to be an owlet since he was 3 years old. And now you are, Jackson. Hooray! Welcome to the club. I wonder if you're telling stories of your own yet. Our Pick of the Week Super Great Artist goes to 8-year-old Francis, who lives in Bremerton in Washington State in the US. We love your drawing, Francis. Tattercoats has all the poise and grace of a ballet dancer, and we think it's really effective the way you've drawn her from the back and simply using a black pen. It really makes you stop and look more. The position of her arms and legs show what a beautiful dancer she was. No wonder the prince fell in love with her. More Owlet welcomes and a Pick of the Week picture next week. Thanks very much for your patience. We'll say hello to you soon. Send your pictures via our website at supergreatkidstories.com, and we can share them with other story lovers on our Facebook page, facebook.com/supergreatkidstories, and on our Instagram art gallery at supergreatkids_art. And thanks to all of you who are subscribing to our podcast. It's only £3 a month, that's less than $4, to get advert-free and access to all the scary stories. And if you pay for the next tier up, you'll get advert-free plus over 45 bonus stories and at least 30 scary stories. Plus, you'll get access to our Super Great Kids Stories Express with short introductions, no adverts, purely story. Great for listening to stories back to back. And did you know that you can now gift a Patreon membership? Visit our website for more details. supergreatkidstories.com. Keep telling those stories and singing your songs. Remember to feed the birds. They'll sing more for you if you do. Happy listening and telling. This podcast was produced at Wardour Studios in fabulous Fitzrovia in London.